Ever have a situation where you wanted to fill a room with shafts of light? Maybe creating the effect of light piercing through a dusty attic, or looking into the sky on the night when a local movie theater is showing a world premiere. The beams of light crisscrossing in the nighttime sky. Those effects can be created in 3ds Max using what is referred to as volume light. To demonstrate the setup, I'll be using a file named Volume Light. You can find it in the Working Files folder. The scene consists of a room with a circular window cutout on the left-hand wall. I've also dropped a spotlight into the scene so we can create our effect. That light positioned outside and pointing in the direction of the window. Let's render the scene so we can see how things currently look. To do that, I'll hit the Render Production button on the right-hand side of the toolbar. Okay, a couple of things we're going to need to do here. The light is currently not casting a shadow. Let's select the spot in the view and we'll activate that option. Clicking on the light, I'll simply right-click, then from the menu on the upper left-hand side, turn on Cast Shadows. We're also not getting any of our lighting effect in our shaded view. Let's turn those options on. Down in the camera view, we'll click in the upper left-hand corner on the name Realistic. From the menu, we'll then choose Lighting and Shadows, then turn on Illuminate with Scene Lights. To activate the shadows in our shaded view, we'll go back to Realistic one more time. This time when the menu opens, we'll again access Lighting and Shadows. Then a little farther down on the menu that opens on the right, we'll turn on Shadows. Okay, let's render again, this time using the Render Last shortcut. That's the keyboard command F9. Now, there appears to be a little problem with our shadow. It looks a tad pixelated on its edges. Using a shadow map shadow to create our shading, we might need to increase the size of the map that's being used to simulate the shadows. Let's see if that's the case. Closing our render and with our light still selected, we'll head over to the Modify column. We'll then, down in the Settings, open up the Shadow Map Parameters tab. Take a look at the map size that's currently being used to simulate the shadow. Being set to 100, that size is just way too low. Let's bump that up to 256 and we'll render again. That looks better, but it probably needs to go a little higher. Let's try a map size of 512. Now that's better, but we're still getting a little bit of a jagged edge down on the lower right-hand side of our render. Let's see if we can fix that by taking our map size up to 1024. There you go. So the larger the map size being used to simulate the shadow, the better and more accurate that shadow will appear. You will find a difference in your render times though, so just be careful as to how high you make that adjustment. Let's see if we can't also fuzz up the shadow a tad by changing the sample range. We'll take that from its default value of 4 up to 25. Okay, looking good. Now for the volume effect, we'll head down to the section called Atmospheres and Effects. Once that's opened, we'll click on the Add button. In the dialog, we'll select Volume Light, then click OK. This adds our volumetric effect. Let's go ahead and render again. So that's pretty quick and easy. Now we can adjust the density of the volume back in the right-hand column. We'll select the volume light entry from the list, then click below on Setup. Down in the volume controls of the dialog box that opens, on the right-hand side at the top, you'll see Density. If we wanted to increase the volume effect, we'd simply take the density higher. Let's try a value of 10, then render again. The effect will probably look better if we lower the setting some. Let's try a density of 3. And we'll compare that to a density value of 1.5. We can break up the volume some by adding a little noise. A little farther down in the settings, you'll see your noise controls. Let's turn on the noise, then set the amount to 0.5. You now see how the volume light has been broken up a little by the pattern of the noise. Let's take the noise amount to 1 for comparison. That's probably a little bit too much. Let's take the noise back to 0.5. You can also change the size of the noise. A little farther down on the right-hand side, let's change that size to 10. If needed, you can also break up the uniformity of the noise's size, which might in this case make things look a little more realistic. To the left of size and a little further down, you'll find uniformity. Let's change that to 1. Let's also take our density back up to 3. There's also a control to animate the noise, which you can do adjusting the phase value. Now we won't be doing that here, but the setting is available if you need that control. The phase value adds a little churning effect into the noise once things have been keyframed. You've also got settings to determine both the wind direction and strength, just above that and over on the right-hand side. You can even add a little color into the volume, maybe creating the effect that you'd see on a concert stage. Back at the top of the volume settings, you'll see 2 color swatches. We'll change the fog color. Clicking on the swatch, we'll change the color to yellow, then render again. Let's also see how a light blue would look. We can then reset the color of the fog to white by clicking on the Reset button, then saying OK. If we add something into the scene, we'll see how that affects the shaft of light. I'm going to close the render, then right-click on the screen, choosing Unhide All. With a red ball now being added into the view, let's render again. Notice how the ball blocks the volume effect behind it. And if we were to move our light, you'd see the volume effect change accordingly. With the light now positioned lower in the view, let's see how that changes the way the render turns out. To finish off the effect, we'll make 2 last adjustments. We'll take the size of the noise to 20 and the density back to 1.5. So that's how you go about setting up the volume effect. Now, there's going to be plenty of situations where you'll be able to find a use for it in your scenes. So pack it away in your bag of tricks and be sure to use it the next time one of your projects calls for it. I'll save the scene out as Volume Light Completed if you'd like to take a look.